It's Gripe Session time with your host, George Wanaka.
It's about nothing.
Discussing everything from real estate, current events, a little bit of everything, and the annoying little things that just tick you off.
You can't handle the truth.
What? You didn't know?
Here's your host, George Wanaka.
Your ass better call somebody.
Okay, welcome back, everybody. Welcome to today's edition of the Gripe Session. As always, I have another very special guest coming in with me today. This gentleman is obviously someone that a lot of people are going to know from the baseball world. At the end of the day, I know him from, obviously, my New York Mets. And another way I know him, quite honestly, is from, yes, that's correct, Fantasy Camp. For those of you that listen to this podcast and watch this on YouTube, this gentleman has just recently become a member of the coaching staff over at Fantasy Camp, and I want to welcome today to the podcast, welcome Mr. Mike Hampton. Mike, what's happening?
Hey, what's going on, George? Good to see you, bud.
Good to see you, my friend. So first and foremost, again, one of the things when I have a lot of the coaches on this podcast, I like them to kind of talk about their career, where they started off, how did they get to where they got to, and then we can go a little bit further into your career from there.
Okay, well, I'll start. I was born and raised in a small town in Florida, Central Florida, about an hour north of Tampa, called Homosassa, Florida. My family, my grandfather started a seafood business back in 1962 called Cedar Key Fish and Oyster Company, and that pretty much provided for our family. Once he passed, my father took over and ran that until he retired from that line of work. But so that's kind of just where I kind of grew up. Just a good country town. A lot of fishermen, a lot of just good down-to-earth people. And I had, very young parents growing up. And, one of the greatest things for me about having young parents is they were super involved. We were growing up together, and my father was always around for sporting events. He was, living vicariously through me, and since he had me at such a young age. So, I was kind of his guy. So he coached me in football, baseball, pretty much all the way through high school. Taught me work ethic. Taught me to, in between the lines, never give up, always hustle. He really instilled in me the values of being a good teammate and, just really going out and giving your best. I started playing just like most kids, Little League and flag football at like 4 years old, and just, kind of progressed as we got going. Worked my way, we played in All-Stars, which I kind of reference that because I'm coaching my younger son. Now he's 10. I'm coaching my nephew who's 12. So they play on the same baseball team here in Scottsdale where I'm at. And, so I still see some of the things. My dad's actually here in town watching them play. I kind of do emulate some of the things he taught me and the way he coached, being really positive, supportive, but also, learning how to get down to work. So, like most guys that end up in the big leagues, you're making your all-star teams and you're doing things like that. But, the big leagues were the farthest thing from my mind. I was just out there having fun. I played football when it was football season. I played baseball when it was baseball season. Played basketball when it was basketball season. I wrestled. I just really played tons and tons of sports, probably all the way up until my junior year in high school. And then I focused on just football and baseball. So I went to Crystal River High School. I was an all-state defensive back my junior, senior year. Of course, all-state. I wasn't an all-state pitcher. I was all-state utility player my junior, senior year because I played center field and hit and pitched and did multiple things. So, that led me to getting drafted by the Seattle Mariners in the 6th round in 1990. I had full rides to Florida State, and Miami. Decided I was going to Florida State, but once my name was called in the draft, it was a dream of mine to become a professional athlete. I wasn't sure if it was going to be football or baseball, which was my passion, but ironically, I stopped growing in about the 10th grade, like 5'9.5", 5'10" was my max. And I was like, man, if I was 6'2", I could probably play safety for somebody. But the writing was on the wall, being left-handed, which was an advantage I felt for myself. And then, kind of started seeing some scouts show up at some of the games my junior and senior year. And then, got into the Mariner system. And then, my journey to the big leagues and to the awesome year with the Mets in 2000, some hurdles and some definitely bumps along the road. But baseball's a sport of failure. So if you can't handle some of those things, then probably pick a new passion. But, it kind of led us to here. And, I had some fun times. I mean, some of the greatest memories of my life are through baseball, and my greatest relationships are through baseball. And then, when fast forward to retiring and then getting into the Mets fantasy camp, the first time I was called to do it, I was like, all right, let's see how they're gonna accept me there. I said, I know they liked me in 2000, went to World Series, but once I moved on to Colorado, a lot of things kind of started going the other way. But every time I go back to the city, I'm embraced, and people call my Mikey, and I'm like, man, it kind of always feels good to get back in the city. And I feel that the more the years have progressed and gone on, that every visit to what was Shea, now Citi Field, it feels more and more special, and great seeing the guys and the fans and all my fantasy camp buddies, man. I mean, it's honestly some of the more fun times I've had, just kind of hanging out with you guys and learning about you and learning where you come from and why your passion is so great that you continue to do the Mets fantasy camp every year. And now I'm in front of you. So I kind of a real fast forward there, but that's why I'm here.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So now, you brought fantasy camp up, and we always, Doug Dickey probably, not only has he been on the podcast, but he's probably had more mentions in his podcast than pretty much anybody in period. But with that being said, talking about fantasy camp really quick, and then we'll go back into your career. When you first were asked to do fantasy camp, and you started to say a little bit about it as far as, what's this going to be all about, et cetera, when you got into that locker room for the first time, again, as a former professional with the bunch of us, hacks, that's the easiest way to say it, right? Has been, never was, that kind of stuff. Talk a little bit about, again, the camaraderie. And I mean, we call it, fantasy camp or family camp because everybody turns around and does become family. I was at opening day the last couple of years, and when I tell you my phone's ringing with former players and stuff like that, and people are like, oh my God, I'm like, yeah, they're regular people. Talk about that, how that locker room turns into family.
Yeah. So once you kind of get that email from Doug and you kind of go through, first thing you do is you kind of start looking at some of the other professionals, who else is going to be there. And, like Lyndon Rush and I played together, and he's been a big part of it, so you start working away from that. Everybody talk Zeal, and then you see, the Hojos, Doc shows up, some Mackey. I played with Mackey in Seattle, like so many kind of, 6 degrees of separation, those connections. So that's one of the first things you kind of start doing, see who you're going to be with there, rekindle those old relationships, as well as, meet some new guys. Hojo's been amazing. Like Mookie, when he was first pick, I mean, just I can just go down the line. And then what I try to do is you guys are so into it. You're paying your hard-earned money to be there and to, not just to mingle with the guys, but also to get better at baseball. So I really take it upon myself. If you want to learn, I'm there to teach you and help you. And, kind of you bounce some questions off me, I'll give you the answers. And I kind of liken it a lot to Little League, just that you're kind of raw, but you want it so much, and you get there and you work and you try so hard and you want to get better. And that's what these kids are doing. So, it's a big kids game. I tell people that I was fortunate enough to play Little League for a living, and I really focused on playing like that. I wanted to be happy. I wanted to be fun. I wanted to work hard. If I was hitting, I wanted to do my best. If I was running, I wanted to run my fastest. And you guys emulate that every time y'all step on the field. Now, some hamstrings might tighten up, some calves might blow out, and some things might happen along the way. Those things have tightened up over the years. But it makes it fun because, you see you guys really giving it every bit of effort. And that really energizes me to kind of help you guys improve and then want to be there. And then you dive into the personal part. You get into, what you do for a living, and then how do you get here? How can you afford to be here? And you hear anything from, I had one guy that I was speaking to, and he made like 80% of the bread for Subway. And you're like, what? And then you think about that, how much bread that is. And then he said, I got it down to a science where, if they call me and they said something's wrong, I'll be like, no. I said, your guy cooked it too long, or you got to put it in the oven too long. So those guys, there was one guy that owned like 57 Texacos. And I'm like, holy smokes, you start talking to him. And then you got the guys that you work finance, you got the guys. So just all walks of life coming together. And it's just like professional baseball. You got Latin American, you got Asia, you got America, you got guys from the South that their parents are plumbers and doctors, and then you got the people that are from the North and they might be doctors. So everybody coming together for one common goal, and that's for the love of baseball. So that just it energizes me. It gives me a passion that keeps that passion going, makes me want to watch more baseball. So it's just a win, and it just makes me happy in my heart.
That's awesome. Yeah, one of my goals is to stay healthy enough to once my son is eligible to come and do fantasy camp, to actually share that experience with him, because I tell people, I'm like, I could tell you a lot about it. And I sell real estate for a living, but I can't sell this. Like anything that I'm going to tell you about this, you're going to get there and it's going to be completely undersold.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But anyway.
And then, like I say, you get, I mean, you're sitting there and you're talking with Doc, and he's just the most normal person ever. You're sitting there talking with Hojo, the most normal guy ever. Like, we were all little leaguers. We were all, we got hardworking parents. I mean, we're all the same people. We just happen to do something different for a living. But once, like you say, once you get in that room, once you really start talking to the guys, you're like, holy smokes, man, these guys, they're just real normal guys. And I feel baseball is one of the most pure, sports like that. Such a melting pot from all over the world that you find like some really, really great people in the game of baseball.
Yeah. It was funny. One morning I was downstairs at the hotel having breakfast before camp started, and Todd Pratt comes over. He sits down with me. He starts having some breakfast and orders something. And Doc comes over, sits down. And he goes, "Can I come and sit with y'all?" And I'm like, "No, you can't. No, not at all." I was like, And then it was funny because I think somebody took a picture, and I'm like, "Yeah, this is my." Wednesday morning, I'm having breakfast with a guy that was on my wall and Doc Gooden's poster, and hit one of the best home runs in Mets history in Todd Pratt. And I'm just sitting here casually having breakfast with them this morning and kind of go from there. Not a big deal. So
and you can just shoot the crap, right? I mean, it's like they're so humble, and it's just like a normal conversation. It's just So
and then
fun.
Once everybody knows you and they know who you are and stuff like that, that's when, in my opinion, that's where the real fun begins, because that's when the ball busting starts and all that other kind of wonderful stuff start, which is part of the game too. So, anyway, your career is obviously gone. You've been with a bunch of different teams before and kind of go from there. So, but I think the question that most Mets fans that are going to watch this are going to probably want to know is the school system really that much better in Colorado than in New York?
I always like, I got all kinds of answers for those things, but I said, well, one, I just go to the straight, both my boys graduated college with honors. So even though only one of them was in that school system for like a year, I mean, I guess I can attribute that. But I do go, we all talked about it. And, I kind of my first camp, they're like, hey, how about the school systems? I'm like, well, I said, I never really said anything about the school systems. And I go, as Sandy Alderson, I said, but I'm a baseball player. I'll just wear it. But, he was the one that said that quote. I just said, I want to be somewhere where I felt, I could, I'm from the woods, I'm from the country, somewhere where kind of fit my narrative. Now take this and don't forget this. I was never told about, hey, have you ever went up north? Have you ever went into Connecticut? You ever went up there? Like, I mean, what a beautiful part of the country. I mean, I really embraced the city. I mean, when I was there for the 1 year, I wanted to live in the city. I wanted to experience everything the city had to offer. And this is my greatest year. It's my most fun year I've ever had. I mean, having the best meal I've ever had at 11:30 after a baseball game at any time, and you can't in New York. You can't do that just anywhere. Like you can find the greatest meal of your life at an odd time. But like I said, I embraced the city. From going to shows to tons of things. I lived across right by the park because I wanted my son at the time. He was 4, turning 5. I wanted him to be able to get out and get into the park and kind of, I'd always spend an hour or two just running through the park with him before I'd go to the game. But going back to that, that saying, when my first game back, I remember there was a sign over the dugout that said, "How's the school system?" And he spelled it with a K. I was like, obviously better in New York right now, so fix that. But I've taken a lot of ribbing for it, but it's fine. I'm totally fine with it, and I just think it's fun. It's a good way to start a conversation, and then by the end of it, we're having lunch and drinking cocktails together.
That works. And not only Connecticut has some great spots up there, but upstate New York has got some really, really nice, country spots and stuff like that. So it's and most, even in New York, even in downstate, some people really don't go upstate and look at some of the stuff. And it's like, especially around the fall and that time, it's absolutely gorgeous up there.
Oh, so, yeah. I fell in love with, with Cooperstown, Oneonta, and all that. I mean, I was there this summer for Billy Wagner's induction, and it's always so fun to go up there. But like I said, people don't understand it because we always, especially the outsiders, especially the country boys like me down south, we associate New York with the city. It's just a piece. I'm a huge integral piece of of the state, but that's what everybody sees is that. And then, but once you're able to explore and you're like, wow, man, what a beautiful, beautiful state.
Absolutely. So one of the things that I know you had spoken about is this, that you're involved with the kids nowadays and with your kids and Little League and All-Stars. And you had mentioned earlier that you played multiple sports, which, did a lot of things and kept you very athletic. What's your opinion nowadays of I've spoken to a lot of former players, and a lot of them pretty much say almost the same thing, is to play as much sports, different types of sports potentially as possible to keep you athletic, where now there's more of a push to get people to make a decision what sport you do, stick with that the entire time. From somebody who's done it, where do you stand on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a problem. Unfortunately, we're as parents, I think it's more important to us than it is the kid to have the greatest 10-year-old, the greatest 11-year-old, the greatest 12-year-old. I mean, the kids aren't care. Like I said, I coach my son. I mean, I can see so many things wrong, so many ways I can help him. I'm just hammering. And then he turns around and goes, "Can you just be dad right now?" I'm like, and it kind of hits you like, man, because we really force our kids, I think, to do that more than they want to. So I'm a huge proponent of multiple sports. One, you give your, different ligaments every 10 minutes rest and your muscles, and then you use different muscles. You strengthen up muscles that you might not be using in baseball, and, from shooting a basketball, from kicking a soccer ball, from foot quickness and foot speed. So all those things, lead up to eventually there's a time where you can hyper focus on those, but it's not when you're 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. I'm talking about maybe 15, 16. Okay, let's kind of start narrowing down a few things. Mm-hmm. But also, the kids don't get enough rest. I got multiple kids that play club baseball, Little League baseball. They play flag football. They play basketball all at the same time. Where's your rest? When is the body going to have a chance to, after it breaks down, to rebuild itself? And that's just not happening in today's youth. So what you see is a lot of more youth injuries, a lot of major youth injuries. We all have strains and sprains and rolled ankles and things like that through just being a kid and being rambunctious. But I think for me, there's a better way to do it. And that's just, rest and give kids multiple sports. Go swim, go ride your bike, use the summer, for fun. There's going to be time to hunker down and really focus. But I think it's good to give your mind a rest too. So, I mean, we could talk about this all day long. It's just because I really feel that it's a problem. I feel it's driven by money and greed more than just the development of a player and a person, and once you get into the development of a person, like right now, I'm trying to back off a little bit because I'm such a competitive person and I've always been a win person. And now I'm trying to be like, let's develop not only the player to be a better player, but also a better person, a better teammate. And then once you do that, once you get into these tournaments when you're 14 and 15 and 16, you're not a selfish player. You're all pulling together. And that's how you build a winning culture and build championships.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I hear that. I mean, to me, like you said, perfect analysis is sometimes it's more about the parents want it. And it's like, and I see a lot of that, quite honestly. And I've pretty much every one of my kids is now out of Little League, which I'm actually quite honestly a little bit thankful for, because I've been watching way too much of this major emphasis be put on things like All-Stars and things like that. And it's like, okay, nobody's recruiting your son or daughter at 12-year-old All-Stars. Some of these kids won't go and play at their high school. Like, you're making, it's supposed to be fun. You're making a production out of it, great. But I've watched actual parents get agitated because, oh, my kid wasn't, they weren't selected to do this, to do that. Well, do they care that they weren't selected? Is there politics associated with it? Are they playing travel? Like, what,
Yeah.
That's
do they want to come back next year?
That's it.
That's what you want.
Yeah.
I just did so I've done a podcast with Coach Ballgame. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him. He's really great youth coach, and he does clinics and coaching clinics all over the country. And we just had him come to our local Little League here in Arizona, Arcadia Little League. Yeah, and one of his biggest things is make them want to come back next year. Right? You start losing kids around 11 or 12 years old, so make them want to come back next year. So how do you do that? You make them enjoy it. The baseball is a game of failure. So if you're failing 3 out of 10 times, you got to understand, you got to figure out how to handle failure, and that'll for into life as well. So that's what we're talking about. We're building men and women, through sports, that are going to be great people in society, great team players, great business owners, and fit into a community. And Little League's a great example of how to do that. If you can teach it the right way, if you can show the patience, if you can show the compassion, and if you can treat your best player and your lower players the same with the same glove, then man, you're winning, and you're going to come back to play next year.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more on that. So let's go back into baseball or Major League Baseball now. There's obviously been tons of rule changes over the last couple of years. You're talking about your pitch clock, talk about bigger bases, talk about the ghost runner. All of these changes now, obviously this year, they're implementing ABS into the conversation. Mm-hmm. What's your opinion on all of these changes to the game that you've played for years?
I'd like to go back to the old rules. I'd like to go back to exactly how it was intended to play. For me here, and my argument is this. I'm like, everybody's like, man, speed up the game. Let's get it under 3 hours. Let's get it. I'm like, what are you in a rush for? I mean, you got to take the trash out. You got to go put the kids down. You got to, what are you in a rush to get home for? For me, when I go to watch a professional football or basketball or an MMA fight or something like that, I'm watching people that can do things I can't do. And the more I'm there, the more I got a chance to see something spectacular. So I'm an old school guy. I like the old rules. I mean, you pick over twice, and now I'm stealing. I'm stealing. There's certain things that I wish that weren't in the game. But I think I think they're doing it for the right reasons, trying to give a better fan experience and trying to speed the game up. I mean, I think they're trying to do it the right thing. But for me, as a traditionalist, I prefer the old rules. Let's go play baseball like we play it in Little League. We don't do those things in Little League. We're not teaching those rules in Little League. We're just playing baseball. Let's go back to those. Let's play Little League rules. Let's go back to those games, those times. And that's just my personal opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I'm a traditionalist. People are like, oh, let's get the game under 3 hours. I'm like, why? I would rather watch a 1-0 pitching duel than 15-run back and forth, knocking each other down, all this other kind of stuff, because now you're taking strategy out of the conversation. That's the whole purpose. We're not playing on a computer.
Yes. Yeah. So, the computer can't see my heart, right? No. The computer can't feel how that thing's pumping. I think when some of the greater managers, the Bochy's, the Baylors, the Cox, the Dusty Bakers, those the Joe Maddens, those real players, managers, and you get to know the person, and what he's like when there's bases loaded and 2 outs, and you need that big hit, because you've dealt with him, you've talked to him, you interacted with him. Just not the numbers didn't tell you to do it. It's because the person. You can see in his eyes if he's ready, if he wants it. So that you'll never replace that human connection, that human interaction. And and trying to do that. And I love the analytics part of it for the value of creating scouting reports, game plans, and things like that. And then you got to know the player. How much information can I give this player opposed to that player? Some guys can process it all. Some can process just little parts. Some don't need it because they have amazing stuff. It does not straight. Fire it towards the middle and let it eat. And where it goes. But I think there's better ways to do it. I think you can integrate without letting it take over the game. And I feel like we're kind of going in that way.
See, and I love and hate analytics all in the same conversation, right?
And it's easy to do, yeah.
Yeah, because I love certain parts of it, but then there's other halves of it where it's like, okay, as a pitcher, as an example, oh, well, if this guy's not in the 90s, nobody's going to want to look at him. I'm like, but if that was the case 20 years ago, you're not some of the best pitchers who are in the Hall of Fame, like Tom Glavine, like Greg Maddux. They're not even in baseball. So because they're more on movement, they're more on hitting spots, they're more on 1,000 different factors. So I'm waiting and hoping at some point that the pendulum is going to come a little bit back to the beginning to say, okay, it's nice that somebody might throw hard, but do they know how to get somebody out?
Well, we're through these drive line programs, through these max effort, all out effort, you're seeing smaller windows of greatness at times, you're seeing a lot more injuries at times, but you're seeing a lot less pitching. You're seeing a lot more throwing. Like being able to set up hitters and dust him off the plate, sink it away, right? Sinker away, cut him in. Just certain things like learning how to use both sides of the plate, up, down, in, out. A lot of these guys, I tell you, the best ones can still do it. The guys that are winning Cy Youngs, the guys that are always in the top, they're still doing it. But you got the guys that are blessed with the 98 to 101 mile-an-hour fastball, and they've been they've mowed people down because they can't really handle it. And then they get to the big leagues and everybody's throwing that hard. Major league hitters know how to hit that stuff, and if you can't locate, you're not going to be there long. I don't care how hard you throw it. How hard you throw it, guys can get the timing. But if you got movement, if you got an off speed that you can throw for strikes behind the count, all right, then we'll call that pitching. But if you're a max effort guy just ripping and ripping and ripping, one, you're going to get hurt. Two, you're probably going to have a mediocre career, and then it's going to be out of the game before you know it. Mm-hmm. I'll take that guy that's 91 to 94 with sink and cut over that guy that's throws a straight 98 mile-an-hour fastball. Give me the movement. I got you. And you talk to my major league hitters. Speed's not the factor. It's the movement's what's hard to hit, right? Having to guess where it's going to end up, not where knowing where it's going to end up. So yeah, you give me Maddox and Glavine. You give me Johan Santana. You give me some guys that know how to pitch and change speeds. I win you championships.
Okay. So, favorite, again, you've played with a lot of different teams, Mets, obviously, Seattle, Houston, Atlanta. Favorite place to play?
Probably I love Wrigley. I can't lie. I love the day games. I love the fact that you get up, you have breakfast, you go to the field, you're playing in a day game. It's always sold out, whether they've got 7 wins or 70 wins. Those fans are going to show up and be pretty passionate about the game. I always love pitching those day games. Always love being on the mound. And then afterwards, it's kind of like a day job, a regular job. Afterwards, you're done at 4:35 o'clock. You go to dinner. You go have a couple pops, and the next thing you know, it's like 10, 11 o'clock. You shut it down, get ready for the next day. So always playing in Wrigley's always has a pretty special place. And then, kind of a little hidden gem, which, I encourage everyone to go to is Pittsburgh. I love that park. I love right there by the Three Rivers. I love it's next to the football stadium. You can stay right there in the city and walk across the bridge and everybody's doing it. I think they got a great blue collar community that, loves their team. I wish they kind of put a little more money behind it because I think they deserve a winner. So I think if you get a chance, if any of your listeners get a chance to hit a PNC Park, go do that.
Yeah, earlier we were talking off camera regarding with my family's doing a baseball trip where we kind of visit every major league stadium, but it only counts if the whole family goes. And Pittsburgh was actually the very first, when we started doing it, Pittsburgh was the first stadium that we went to when we were starting the whole trip. And what a gorgeous stadium. And actually, we're talking about going, coincidentally, my son's college is like an hour outside of Pittsburgh. So when we're going to go watch him, when we take him back to school at Easter break, we're talking about going to a Pittsburgh game just because we love the stadium that much. And it was such a great time.
Do it. Yeah. It's always fun. Love being around the ballpark.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So what are you doing nowadays with yourself, Mike, now that are you just, quite honestly, I know you're obviously retired from the game and being around the game and stuff like that, and obviously you're donating your time for the kids and little leagues and stuff. Are you doing anything else other than that? Coaching, training, that sort of stuff?
Yeah, we have a fall program as well. It's called the Arcadia Aces, and we're trying to create little league. Some kind of a hybrid of a club team because we don't want the parents to pay the fees, and we use local coaches that aren't paid. And then so we can be able to cut the costs down and keep them close. So one of the tougher parts about coaching like travel ball and club ball here in Arizona is like everything's on the west side or everything's far on the east side. It's hard to find anything centrally based. So the parents are getting up at like tomorrow morning, for instance. My brother's daughter has a game, and it's at 8 o'clock, and it's like 45 minutes away. You got to be there an hour ahead of time. So man, you're getting up at 5:45, 6 o'clock and get out, and get out of the house. So we're trying to create more of a locally based team, and with the idea to take them to Cooperstown, to take them that play that summer. My older boys, which are now 30 and 26, They both played there, had great times. I went one year with my younger one, which is 26 now. And what a fabulous place. What a fun adventure for those guys. And I think the greatest part is that they don't have to talk to the parents, right? The parents are kind of cordoned off. They stay in their own village with their own self, and the parents can't say anything. And that's probably why they have the most fun, because the parents are taken out of the equation. They get to enjoy their kids without coaching them, without, telling them to do this, do that, and just really enjoy it. So we're doing that. Also, I have an app called Player. It's Playr, and I've invested in that, and I work as an ambassador with them. And basically, it's red zone for baseball. So what we do is, like, if you download your favorite roster, your favorite players, you get an alert on your phone every time they come at bat. So you can watch their live AB. You got the MLB feed. You can watch their live, through your subscription, you can watch their live at bats. And then you can go back to doing what you do. Like, say, if Jared Judge comes up, if Soto comes up, if Benj comes up, you want to see his first at bat. Or we archive his first homer, so you can always see his first homer, and he can have it. So, trying to build that out over the past 3 years has been fun. We make a lot of great connections through that. I also work with a mental health app called Roulette, which it's basically like a visual meditation, and meditating has been proven to be a big de-stressor, especially in high volume, jobs and real stressful situations. So trying to dabble in some of the startup world, but mostly I'm honest. I'm mostly a dad. I make breakfast in the morning, like things I missed out with my older boys because I was playing so much. I got a daughter that's 13 and heavily into theater. She'll be in New York doing a theater camp this year. She's so excited for that. But just being a dad, and like I said, I pick breakfast, take them to school, pick them up, and that's a valuable time. This is a valuable time in their lives, and it's really I'm glad to be able to do that.
That's great. So when you went to Cooperstown, was it All-Star Village, the one with the big hill? Did you like doing that big hill? That big stinks, man.
Yeah.
That big hill stinks. I'm not. My son played in that. I was like, man, I got to walk up that. What, are you kidding?
I'm not going to lie to you. Some of the greatest times I had was after the games. I went and had some of the families rent a house on the lake and just hanging out on the lake. Oh, man, how beautiful that is. The setting, the temperature's great. Now, I ain't going to lie to you. It's going to rain on you, but that's kind of fun, too, you know. And just that whole experience, you're meeting new people, you're bonding, everybody there for their kids to have fun. I just think that's it. If you're local Little League, if your local club team, if your guys can ever make that happen, I mean, it's well worth it. It's a memory that my older boys talk about, forever, and yours will too. So
yeah, so I did it with my son's team, the travel team, and we stayed with all of the boys, and it's definitely a memory. Especially the memory that really sticks out for me is being in one room with 12 boys over the span of a week. I don't know if I've actually experienced that many smells in one absolute situation. However, it was a little bit of an experience, to say the least. But the best part about that is, like you said, you meet a lot of different people. And one day I'm outside and I'm talking to one of the other coaches, and they came from California, San Diego. And I'm like, we're just sitting here having a conversation, and I shake his hand and just tell him my name, and he tells me his name, and I went, "Are you related to?" And he smiled, and it was Tony Gwynn's son.
Oh yeah.
So I was like, look at that. I was like, what? Such a small world and that kind of stuff. And this is before I was going to fantasy camp and stuff like that. So it was like, wow, this is actually pretty cool. But baseball brings everybody together.
It does. You're right.
So anyways, so we definitely want to thank you for coming on the podcast. We've been going out a little bit for a while. What I always end up every person asking, especially on the baseball side, we do like a little bit of a rapid fire question. We started referring to it as "don't shoot the messenger," and it's normally yes or no, or picking one side or another side. So, are you ready? We got a couple of questions to throw at you.
All right, let's do it.
Let's rock. Okay, pitch clock or no pitch clock?
No pitch clock.
Bigger bases or normal bases?
Normal bases.
Ghost runner or no ghost runner?
No ghost runner.
No ghost runner. I kind of thought you were going there. DH or no DH?
No DH.
Well,
man, it's so much easier to manage nowadays.
I'm the same way. I don't like the DH either. I think it's what separated both of the leagues, and it was better off anyway.
Agreed.
AL or NL?
They're the same now. That doesn't matter.
Okay. Well, Mike, we definitely appreciate having you come on today. Thank you very much. We definitely appreciate it. Again, we're going to make this go live. Anybody that wants to see that or reach out to Mike, any of the things that Mike has going on, we're going to make sure we're going to put it in show notes so you can reach out to him, check out his app or check out his travel team if you're in that area and you want to get involved. It makes something that he would obviously appreciate, because obviously the more volunteers that are helping out the kids, the better. And because again, it's always about the kids. So again, Mike, thanks for taking the time to jump on today. We've been trying to get this going back and forth for a while between your calendar, my calendar, and everybody's calendar. So we definitely appreciate you coming on, and hopefully we'll get you back on again sometime soon.
Hey, always great seeing you. Look forward to seeing you at Citi Field this year.
All right, buddy.
Have a good one.
Thanks for listening to the Gripe Session. Please follow us on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram.